What's up, Doug?
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. The social distancing is fun, and I haven't lost my mind yet, and my girlfriend hasn't killed me. So I think these are all success.
Yes. Great success, in fact.
Yeah, right.
You look like you're in an office right now.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to act as if, and I'm doing that really cool, what everybody's doing right now, where you have books behind you because it makes you look like you're smart and professional.
Oh, is that what you're supposed to do? I've just got like
No, but that's good. I mean, that looks like a newscast. Like,
dude,
you got the world behind you.
No, yeah, until it starts. Hold on a second. Until it starts looking like it's all gonna start looking like this soon. Like just a bunch of campers and stuff behind me
So
as this thing slowly becomes a nursery. My office, and then I get kicked out of here like very shortly. My wife has made it incredibly clear that the baby comes well before I do. So we're setting the expectation now.
No, in terms of like, I guess it's something that's like kismet. Before this all started, it was like one of those, we moved into a new apartment in the fall here, and I had my own like office equipment, ready to go. And then just out of the blue, we both were like, hey, you know what? We should set up some space for you as well. I had to talk about my girlfriend. And so we had the kind of a secondary offshoot office space for her set up upstairs right before this all hit. So it worked well because either that or we would be so on top of each other working. It would be pretty ugly and terrible. So this
could be why your relationship is going okay through COVID.
Yeah, because she doesn't have to deal with me. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I think we are, let's see here. It's 12 on the dot. Going to give 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll kick this off officially. Doug, we'll introduce you to everybody, and then we'll get started.
That sounds good.
Email right quick. Pat, everything good? You're muted.
I'm muted. Everything's good, man. Doug, how you doing? Good to see you again. Second time.
Man. Yeah, a long time. It's been minutes now, right?
I know, minutes.
Oh, you guys met earlier today?
Yeah.
Call earlier.
Yeah, work capacity.
No, I figured as much, but I just didn't realize you guys had a call set up today.
Yeah.
So you're really getting a fill of one another. You guys don't have to talk to one another if you don't want to.
I'm so sorry.
Let's see here. I'll pull this up right quick and we'll get started. All right, cool. And all right, cool. What do you say we kick this off?
You guys
good for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Search from Home. I'm your host, as usual, Stefan Bajayo, right here. My co-host happens to be to my right.
You're over here.
Okay, and someday we will figure that out. Our guest happens to be to my left, the esteemed Doug Cirillo, who actually has been a friend of ours for quite some time. We've worked closely with him in many different capacities. In fact, he used to be at Sotheby's. Now is at a company called A Place for Mom. You may have seen the ads on television. Hopefully you're seeing it online, or maybe hopefully not, depending on what your needs are. But either way, Doug has actually taken over VP, actually really interesting title there, VP of Content, Data, and Search, or it's...
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Did I do that correctly?
Yeah, that's fine. The sequence.
All right. So
matter.
Point of today, we're going to get into 3 topics if we can. We're going to stretch here. So starting a new gig in the midst of COVID-19. Doug just basically started with A Place for Mom how long ago?
I guess this is week 5. So I think it was the 17th of March, so mid-March.
So you actually started in the middle of COVID, so we'll get right to that. Yep. How A Place for Mom's dealing with COVID-19 specifically, right? They are a service that helps people connect nursing homes and places for elder care to an understanding that individuals traditionally do not have of how to place or find somewhere, literally not just for mom, but for dad as well, or parents. And then, data has always been data, and dealing with data and data usage and kind of dealing with big data has always been the cornerstone of Doug's career, or at least it's become it in my mind. When I think of a lot of big data and how to kind of think of it in beyond search, I think of Doug. So I'm so happy to have you on, Doug. By all means, introduce yourself a little more, maybe give everyone a little background, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. You covered quite a bit. I've worn a few different hats over the last X amount of tours of duty in my professional career. So I've worked in product, obviously supporting marketing, commerce. To Stefan's point, I've gotten really deep into the data architecture and infrastructure world, and just realizing that that's really the secret sauce around everything. And I am by no means an expert in any one of these things. I'm a journeyman, and I love learning, and I love, figuring out the different plays, different facets, and working with different people that have deep level knowledge around those, kind of different components as it relates to marketing, and commerce, and how we form the world and help to solve people's questions. But yeah, right now, to Stefan's point, doing the same at, really trying to tie all those worlds together at a place for mom, and not really dissimilar from what I've done in the past. So good group there, a good mission, and, really, especially nowadays when people are really looking for help and really leaning on digital, I think it's a really important, crucial time for a place for mom and for, healthcare and services in general, and figuring out how to really support people through virtual channels.
I also didn't mention he's humble, so don't believe him on the not being an expert part.
It's all smoke and mirrors. All smoke and mirrors.
He's been fooling me for years, and now you're all a witness. So let's get started just on the personal, man. How are things going? So you're here in New York City, or what's the deal?
Right now, doing my social distance exercise in Jersey City. So right across the Hudson.
How are things by you?
Really eerily quiet. I grew up in the in the suburbs, really in, like, the western part of New Jersey on the countryside. So quiet in that setting is nice and comfortable. And I wish I was out there, where my parents are. But quiet in an urban setting to this degree is really unsettling and unnerving.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
I mean, it's the same. I'm out in Long Island, and it's like, it's like The Walking Dead out here. There's really...
You have zombies already?
Yeah, right.
Well,
there's not.
Don't mess with me, man. Tell us the truth.
That would have been more exciting. I was talking about that with some friends. Like, of all the different apocalypses that we could possibly go through, we got the milquetoast one, right? This is terrible.
It's really bizarre, just like you see people walking up and down the street just to get exercise, the kids are going stir crazy. I was just on a meeting before this, and they were, the boys were fighting literally right behind me. Stefan was on the meeting with me, and it's just like that aspect of it. I can, we're getting to the point where everyone really needs to start to get outside and do something. Yeah. But it's like eerily quiet here, and it's like unnerving to a degree.
Now, you both obviously, are married and have, families. Have you found it? It's just more of a philosophical conversation I've had with friends, because I'm not at that place yet. But how have you found the mix, or like the complete blend now and shift between kind of like the professional life and the home and work life, since there's no separation across the board anymore between those two? Has that been challenging?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because, and we talked about this on our first few episodes, when it was really like, where's the off button? You know what I mean? Like, when do you know, like, cause like I'm in my spare bedroom right now, which is why I look like I'm in the back of a department store. And, and for me, it's when I leave this room, you know what I mean? Like I always say, you need like a change, event to happen. And usually it's like this room is work. When I leave this room, I'm not, I tried not to work and spend time with family, but it's been hard. It's been hard. I remember for the first couple of weeks, I worked until like midnight every night, just because because usually my change event is getting on the train and coming home. And when that's the change event. But I think I've gotten better at it over the last few weeks, but it's been hard. It's been hard to turn off, certainly.
Yeah, I was just talking to Brooke this morning, who recently moved back to Austin. No, actually, it was Leo. I was talking to Leo, and we were talking about how 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 basically there's an ad, I forgot what I think it's for Audible, where the woman leaves her house and she's like listening to Audible, and she gets on a bus and she gets on a train and she does and then she comes home and it looks like, you know, she just commuted back home after a long day's work. And her husband, assumingly her husband, says to her, do you really have to keep commuting when you're working from home? And essentially the idea is that she's like doing all this stuff just so that she can listen to Audible when she leaves, right? So that break moment is huge. I don't have that. I'm very bad at that. I've never been good at that. So this is definitely becoming a problem for me, in that I don't have a division. The lucky part or unlucky part is my wife is 6 months pregnant and has had a pseudo tough labor in that she's like constantly nauseous. So she doesn't really get out of bed, or she does get out of bed, but she doesn't like, she wouldn't want to go walking for 20 blocks like she used to. So she has no intention of leaving the apartment anyway. And she's like doing her thing in the room, whatever, in the bedroom. And I have what will soon be a nursery. Talk to me in like, 3 months when I have a newborn and like, and I don't have a private space and the kid's crying and I'm a new dad. Yeah, it'll be like Search from Home with Pat Reinhardt. Because I'm going to be like, yeah, I don't know how to handle this. So yeah, I mean, I think it was really smart for you guys to set up multiple office spaces, and we were talking about this too.
It just worked out that way. That was just a coincidence of timing. That wasn't purposeful at all.
Do you think that people are going to change the way they look for real estate based on that in the future? Like the whole idea of a home office is like a necessity,
or it's going to be it's one of those things where I think, even from like a WeWork or I know like RXR and some other companies are looking to, I think long-term, long-term commitments and leases will probably continue to go by the wayside, and more like on demand, and scalable short-term to mid-term plays will be the thing. For sure. Your point, I mean, since some companies were already experimenting with a shortened work week and showing the operational cost savings just by reducing a day in the office on the overhead side, I can imagine when they come out of this and realize, hey, there's always going to be, or at least I think there's always going to be situations where you need a collective space to work within, because I'm a firm believer in kind of situation dictates the rule. There are times when you need to be in the war room with others and working and whiteboarding, and there are times when you have, the day-to-day tactics set out and work, be head in and drill down.
Yep.
But I don't think that coming out of this, that the need for kind of like the monolithic real estate play on an ongoing basis to satisfy a requirement for people to be in office just for the sake of being in office is going to be a thing.
So actually that kind of dovetails really well into, all right, so you leave Sotheby's, you're thinking about doing other stuff, you're thinking about going back to school and doing all that, and then A Place for Mom kind of intersects with you and you get this opportunity. Talk to us a little bit about what it's like to start your job in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, did you even get to meet your team, or are they all just faces on a screen?
I got to meet some of the leadership team. Again, I was going through and really was introduced to them, prior to the world grinding to a halt. So in that way, it was good. I mean, I got to hear their perspectives face to face, got to, to meet a lot of the leadership team that I'd be working with more directly. But having said that, after I, accepted the role and we came to terms and set the start date of mid-March, that happened to be the first day that it was mandated that everybody work from home in the company. So my day one was really everybody was remote.
My God, that's crazy.
Yeah, right. I mean, the plus side, I mean, I think a lot of, what A Place for Mom is working to achieve, and a lot of, the fundamentals that we're trying to stand up and set up, both, in the short term, as well as I would say over the course of this year and going into next, is not dissimilar to what, I've worked on in the past, and I think are best practices. So in that event, it doesn't really shift fundamentally what we want to attack, but obviously from a velocity standpoint and in terms of myself personally, just learning what the business is, and obviously this is a new vertical for me, especially on the healthcare side, as well as, really getting my, a good feel and being ingratiated with the team as well, because that's a big aspect. I mean, I think it's great to be able to communicate in real time and leverage video for that, but being in the same room, with others and interacting on a personal level, you can't really replicate that, because that builds a lot of team chemistry, especially when you're in it with people, like throughout the course of a day.
Yep.
It's tough, I think, to get that kind of flow going, completely remote at this point.
Yeah.
and getting ramped up. Having said that, I think everybody's been incredibly understanding, flexible, and I think it's really an exercise in expectation setting than anything else. So it's forcing us to, really clearly communicate, over communicate, and making sure that we're, in lockstep. So one of the byproducts of that, and normally it's not a great thing, especially when everybody's in the same building or in the same office, is, having a lot of meetings. But in this event, it's almost kind of helpful to get into that cadence, to really make sure that everybody is aligned, especially when you're going through kind of a fundamental transformation, as we are on when you're talking about like a complete restack, a stack migration or a rethink in terms of how you're competitively supporting and, attacking the landscape there and helping people out.
It's cool. It's in a way, it kind of does give you an advantage in that, like, the playing field just got leveled to newbie for everyone. Like, they all worked in that company before you, but they didn't work this way in that company before you. So now, as they have to reset their new world, you get to come into a new world that's reset. So you're all kind of learning, even though they have the tribal knowledge, right? You're learning it in the same awkward new form of existence, right?
Yeah, and it's funny you saying that, and I watched the the interview that you guys had with Rand, where it was more about kind of a pivot in supporting product or how you're approaching the market and having to do so differently because the context has changed.
Yeah.
And so even though, I mean, I'm coming in, or I was hopeful to really bring a lot of, pedal to the metal when it comes to the technological and product side, because I mean, it's like I said, the table stakes and the fundamentals, I think are things that would quickly be solved or easily be solved. But one, it's more difficult to do now for me to manage, obviously, as I'm getting ramped up, and credit to the team. I think they're doing a fantastic job across the board. But it's also a challenge given that, like, hey, we were going through a pivot already in terms of how we're approaching the market. Now just layer on this other dimension in terms of how you have to think about it as well. So yes, that's actually a really good point, that everybody, is bringing kind of subject matter expertise from different and various backgrounds, whether it's in industry or whether it's, across industry. But we're all trying to figure out how to apply it now, since this has been kind of like, firecrackers that have been thrown over over a fence at us.
You're being very kind. Firecrackers. It feels more like, I don't know, dynamite to it.
Yeah. True. I don't want to go all the way.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it also comes back to, like Doug, you said before, like I also believe that there needs to be like a communal space where people come together. That's where chemistry is born. I think that's much harder over video. I know there are a ton of companies that work completely remote and work fine. That's totally cool. But I also think, and I've said this before on the program, is that I think that, requests to work from home or to permanently work from home, like 2 or 3, like 1 or 2 days a week, is on the horizon for every single company, because everyone has proven that they can do it, at least everyone who's still operating. What do you think about that? Do you think that, like a lot of companies are going to have to like kind of rewrite their work from home policies after this whole thing?
I mean, I was always a big fan of rewriting that anyway, because as I was saying before, I'm a situation dictates the rule, like, and I'm much more on the, like, on the meritocracy side, right? Like, if you can get your job done, no matter how you're getting your job done or where, but in the end of the day, you're performing, great. Like, and I know that different people in different mindsets call for different environments. And, the type of work or where in the stage of development work is, can dictate what the best environment is as well. So, but yeah, I think those organizations or those companies that may have dragged their feet in the past around allowing for that kind of flexibility, will have probably a change of heart, not only because they'll see that, you can still execute, but then, from a bottom line perspective, I think they'll see the savings there that allows them and the flexibility that affords them too, both in terms of, being able to, support the existing workforce, as well as for them to be able to really, be aggressive when it comes to finding other potentially interesting personnel as well, since they're not necessarily locked into geo considerations anymore in the way that they may have positioned and forced themselves to in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think if you're getting your job done, I don't care where you're sitting. You know what I mean? I want everyone in the office because I like hanging out with people. I feed off of energy of people.
Yeah.
For anyone that's ever done those insights trainings with all the different colors, I am a bright sunny yellow, which means I'm basically a gigantic cheerleader. So I feed off of energy in the office, but I also work from home once a week. I work from home on Friday. And I probably get more done in that one day, like from an actual work standpoint, because I'm not being, there's no drive-bys, there's no distractions, there's no, in meetings all day. But I agree. I think that I was always a fan of rewriting it too, because I think that if you can get your job done, I'm totally fine wherever you are, as long as you come back to the big things we need you to.
Yeah, I mean, it was what I was saying before, and I completely agree with that. Like, hey, there's times when you have like stuff that you tactically know you have to accomplish, right? You already have the tasks set up, and you can plug in. But if it's like when it's come to ideation, discovery sets, or just kicking around, stratagems and ideas, that I think is better served, to your point, like live and in person.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily think that has to be in an office environment either. Those bar conversations really help to, because I think removing that environment too is also helpful. So even if it's not like a regular, office situation in the future, but it's more on demand, like, hey, we need to all get together. Great. And having that regular office environment out of the picture allows you to kind of break down that wall in terms of how you're thinking, or like in the box thinking, all the better. But again, I think it's going to be really, I guess, built around the specific needs of a company.
Yeah.
And not like a monolithic point of view.
There's two things you're making me think about, Doug. Like, one, when a job or a role is not hard skills based but soft skills based and doesn't have the same numeric goals, I think it's harder to validate the time spent working from home, because things aren't as black and white. And so sometimes you need to see it with your own eyes, so to see the value of something. So I think that's difficult if a role tends to skew more like sales. At the end of the day, those numbers are going to show themselves. They're going to be fairly, and code, it's going to be what you ship out. Like, you're going to have some metrics that you can actually hold someone to.
Yeah.
It's a little different, I think, with some of the soft roles. The other thing that I think of when I was leading, like, let's say the evangelism team previously, I like the idea that I could turn to the left and ask someone something quickly.
Yeah.
And that you don't have. I have to like Slack, and I get that. Listen, Slack is supposed to be just as easy, right? And doing a FaceTime call or doing a thing, but it just doesn't feel the same. I feel removed. I feel like, even though our conversations I find are more personal, because we're all in a personal space. I was thinking about this last night. We're all in a personal space. I'm calling you in your house. And the first thing we usually ask each other when we talk is like, how's your safety? How are you doing? How are you coping with the situation? There's this common bond between two people, even if they don't even know each other. I've had calls with people I just met, or like it was a sales call or whatever else I had to be on. The condition of the other person is now a topic of conversation and the norm. And so that creates the common ground that you usually are looking for to build rapport. That's already established, right, in the condition we're all in. So it's kind of like the fact that you can't just turn to someone and have a quick convo, and that it requires the technology and the distance, is annoying. At the other side, I love the idea that, like, when we talk, we don't have to bullshit about the weather. Like, we can talk about the real thing, which is like, hey, dude, you sick? No? Cool. How's your family? Everyone good? Like, things that actually matter to us right now that we could relate to one another no matter who they are on earth.
Yeah, but do you think that's more of a result of the condition that, what we're in right now? Would you feel that, like, if you're working remote all the time, that would be where you started, or is it
No,
like
definitely not. You're right. That's the point. But we're all learning to work from home.
Sure.
Like Pat worked from home on a continuum, right? So he
Yeah.
had like that as part of his schedule. A lot of people like myself may have done it from time to time, but we never established. I didn't establish my desk space. I didn't establish, like, I didn't have all those things. I wasn't forced in the position of having to do that. Now it was, the last 3 weeks maybe were fish out of water time, a lot of flopping around in my apartment. And now maybe I'm like, I've found some form of gills and I can now breathe again a little bit, but I still feel distance. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could do this for the rest of my life.
It's a solid fish analogy, Stefan.
Yeah. No, and it's still like, even having to connect with people or to ping people through messengers. I mean, Slack is great. Don't get me wrong. Zoom is awesome. Again, I'm not saying these aren't great tools, but to hear that ping go off, especially at night, and not know what the context is versus when you're at work and you can hear someone and really like read someone, you're not panicking. Nice.
Sorry, I had to. I'm like, I have a fish background. I have to do
I was waiting for you to pull it up.
You knew I was going to do it. I mean, anyone who's been on these knows this is going to happen, right? So like, there's nothing surprising about it. Sorry, Doug. Keep going.
No, it's all right. I also like even to what you were talking about before and unpacking the soft skills thing. I understand where you're coming from there, but and again, this is maybe a good dovetail into the data side, right? Like everybody in an organization should be playing a part in terms of knowing how their role and what their function and what they produce maps to a business goal and objective.
Yep.
Right. Like the same way that you think, or that we think in terms of like, hey, how do we map digital KPIs, conversion points, et cetera? Like I started to think holistically when we determine and outline first what the business goal is and make sure we have alignment there. Then it's like really like, how does that translate downstream, to digital channels? But in the end of the day, I should be able to, even though I'm not the one developing and I'm, helping to set strategically where we want to go. I mean, those efforts, I need to prove the value of those one way or another. Even if I'm not directly outputting the code, I need to show that strategically what we're going for, and which I've outlined to map to a specific set of OKRs and KPIs, is moving the needle. So even on the soft side, like I don't think anybody should or would be expected to operate in a bubble without some form of measurement behind it. Not only for the company itself, but for you too. I mean, I like to produce and feel good that I'm making a difference, and contributing, because how else can I, display my value and earn my paycheck, and two, keep myself marketable and keep myself excited. I like that to me is the fun of it. The pay comes secondary. It's important, but like I love the challenge and opportunity to work with people, produce and show and demonstrate value. And you have to do that no matter if you're delivering code or if you're delivering recommendations. And you need to, and it's stuff that everybody needs to be held accountable for and should be happy to be.
And when I'm thinking about some of that stuff, it's also, I think there's a lot of unsung jobs in our company that when the shit doesn't go wrong, we don't notice it. Of course, when it does go wrong, you do notice it, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of those roles and responsibilities in this become a little more like lost in the shuffle, because I think you have to do more of a job validating that you're doing the work, right? And it's not just happenstance. It's almost like, I hate to say this, but it's almost like those companies that go like, we would have gotten the traffic anyway through SEO. Right.
Oh, you're trying to prove the negative, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, it's like, and so it's like, no, not necessarily. And we could have done a lot worse, but you're not going to give me credit for what we've already achieved, which is crazy because holding on to what you've achieved is actually not a given in search. Right. No. So anyone who's had their air hose stepped on knows that for a fact. Mm-hmm. So, it's funny, whenever any goals are set, they're never set as to, oh, you'll maintain and raise. Well, they always are. You'll maintain, but they're always from the floor that you're currently at. They're never taking the assumption of any loss in addition to gain, right? So it's not like the gain has been offset by what you could potentially lose of what you've already acquired in search.
Sure. And when you're talking about like organic search or even, social, you also have to factor in, you're not in control of any one of those channels or platforms. That's not, I mean, your assumption, like the assumption or illusion of control is just that. At the end of the day,
I
Google's
love that. That's a great point.
I mean, yeah, Google's in charge of it. And you're playing by Google's rules on the search side, and Facebook's in charge of. That's right. And you're again, you can own and control what happens, you know, and you feel like I mean, and rightfully so on your first party and own channels. And that's where, you know, I try to, on the product side, obviously operate as best I can, you know, and be user centric the same way that, you know, Google and Facebook purport to be. But in the end of the day, you control a third of that. So that's just the reality of the world. So, you know, you have to really factor that in too. Not only is there, you know, competitors out there, and for like, you know, larger companies that operate within different verticals or categories, there are companies out there that are not only in a traditional sense attacking you one-to-one, you know, across your portfolio, but then there's other startups on the technology side that are attacking you deeply within one vertical.
I mean, tell us a little bit about, so not everyone knows A Place for Mom. So give a little background on that, just because I think we should. And then let's talk about like the challenge, because I think right now, especially with COVID, there's a whole difficulty, I'm sure, in the way that the world is even looking at, you know, elderly care. There's a whole entire audience there that's been impacted directly by this. There are more concerns than ever, I'd say. Like, I have never thought of the age of my parents. Hey, mom and dad, in case you're watching, this is a marketing thing. Get off. But like, I've never really thought about I probably should based on their ages, but I haven't really thought of their mortality as much. So it's forced me to have to think about these things and worry about the future with my parents and things. So I feel like you guys are very much in a good place, but at the same time, you're also in a very difficult place. So give us a little sense of like, first back up to the beginning, like A Place for Mom. What is it?
Yeah, so I mean, just to, you know, simply distill it down. I mean, we're here to help connect people that have a need, either it's their own need or those of a loved one, and finding, you know, the resources and communities that help them out in various categories. So it's memory care, assisted living, nursing homes, et cetera. So we not only have relationship with communities that help and you know, provide those services, but we have great you know, subject matter experts internally that to you know, work with people that are looking for that help to make sure that they are connected to the, you know, to the right place, and to really give them kind of a qualitative experience there. To your point, I mean, there's been multiple challenges, and you know, stepping into the healthcare space, you know, prior to joining A Place for Mom, I had seen the, I guess, more focused algorithm updates on Google's end, especially when it comes to the healthcare and wellness space. So I'm sure that you know, there was already a lot of competition before, you know, ahead of that. And now you have, you know, a super reason to go into a qualitative experience, not only from a UX overall perspective, but obviously the content and what it is that you're representing to users.
Sure. It's important. It's really important content. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, I would obviously turn to Google. That's like my first step. Yeah. But then like what I find, there's a trustworthiness to it. There's an emotional factor. Yes. There's a definitive health impact, right? Of deciding like where you'd place your parents or what would help them best in their getting older. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really, I mean, that's where the balance is one, you know, how are people looking? So let's you know, and that's where, you know, I think we're really going down the path of really putting our, you know, consumer empathy face on, in terms of really getting a good understanding in terms of what are people really searching for, and how can we balance, you know, our institutional knowledge and academic point of view around it, you know, you know, with how that, you know, with consumers that don't necessarily know really how their problems would be categorized, because again, they don't know what they don't know, and they're not the professionals, you know, that we are, or that the communities that working to service their needs are. Right. So it's really like, how do help people, one, understand what it is that they don't know that they're looking for and connect with them where they are searching, and two, guide them down to make sure that, and connect them with ultimately the help that they need. And that's, a content problem, and that's a product problem. And I say problem and not in a bad sense, but that's a challenge on both sides. And it's something that we're, working to do a better job. And I think, to your point, I can't give everything away that we're trying to do tactically, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe to help people. And it's, for me, especially since I have parents that are of the age that, I would, and probably will be looking for help around these. My mom pings me all the time, joking that she thinks this is a purposeful move as a threat.
What are you getting out of this, Doug? Are you getting some home cooked meals or something?
That's pretty much it. She figures that I'm trying to line them up for a nice nursing home.
Okay, got it. I hope you're working it to some advantage, at least, even if it's a veiled threat. Like,
no, but today, like, to your point, I think not only traditionally has Google and our digital presence served as the starting point for a lot of those families and people's journeys in terms of understanding what really in context what they need help with and where they can get that help. But today, when you really don't have the luxury of going out to doctors, you don't have the luxury of going out to physical locations and really getting and having to do that and perform that search on your own. You really have to lean on digital channels exclusively now. So I think it's both, like, it's I don't want to say benefit, like, oh, it's something that we are can take advantage of in a negative sense, but I think it's something that we're already naturally positioned to be to have a really effective play in the space, and as already as the market leaders in that area. I think it's really, it's our ball to drop. Mm-hmm. And we want to do a better job, not only for our users, but for the communities that we work with as well.
It's a great approach. And what I love about that too, is the idea that, like, even as a leader in the space, you're not taking your foot off the gas. You have a moral responsibility, right? To provide the solutions. And the interesting part, and this is not to downplay it or to negate what you guys do, but it's almost like I think of this much like I think of funerals, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to know a damn thing about I don't want to know a damn thing about what you need to know about a funeral. Yeah. But when you need to know about it, man, do you feel like a fish out of water, and do you need to know it pretty damn quick, right? Yeah. You're making decisions real quick. There's money involved. There's stress involved. There's all of the factors that are like, right? And I can imagine that, as, again, knock on wood, have not had to do this myself, but I can imagine mom or dad gets a diagnosis, stuff starts to go downhill fast. You are left to your own devices. There is no map, right? There is no like instruction booklet on how to do this right. You, to your point, don't know what you don't know. You just need help. And like, if you're not finding that sucks. Or if you're finding worse, the shitty version of that is either predatory or like gives you half answers or gives you wrong answers, definitively you're in a worse position than you were in not knowing, right? Yeah. So I like the idea that that's kind of your job, is to solve for that problem. Yeah,
and it's not dissimilar to, not to take it back, like from how like Sotheby's is positioned, right? And this is the difference between just a pure platform play versus having those experts in-house to curate the experience. Whether it's on the commerce side, and like, hey, Sotheby's, like, hey, there's enough like auction or commerce platforms out there. If you want to sell your wares and goods and or buy, go for it. The reason you go to a Sotheby's or a company like Sotheby's is because they're putting their stamp on it, and you can have a lot of confidence in what it is you're buying in terms of the value that you're getting. Not
brand transference, right?
Exactly right.
Transfers the brand.
Not dissimilar to a place for mom. There's a lot of competition out there, in terms of listings for services and communities, but our specialty is our senior living advisors, or SLAs, that are helping to curate that experience so that you know that you're getting the best advice. You don't have to feel that you're alone in that discovery and learning around that. You're working with people that have worked with, you know, hundreds and thousands of others that have been in your shoes or similar. Understand your problems, you know, understand your constraints when it comes to either geographies, you know, personal abilities and or, you know, monetary support, and will help you get the best that you can get. So like, again, like, and that's where I see not only you know, at an advantage from, you know, really working within the digital and technology side, but having that, you know, the expertise in-house to help people ultimately in a qualitative sort of way, I think is a big differentiating factor. We're not just a pure platform play. And I think that's going to be very, very advantageous right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the big things you also just said, you hinted at, you know, the education around this, and Stefan, you hit this too, is that this is not just something that, this isn't like, you know, like you're walking by a window and you see something and you buy it. You know what I mean? This is something that should take a long time to decide, you know, to decipher which way to go. But Stefan, to your point, sometimes you don't have that luxury. But you know, so it's interesting challenge to find the balance between those two things, right? You know, it's like, you know, you have to educate people because this is not a small decision. That it does not cost a small amount of money. So your SLAs are actually, you know, are actually part of that offering, is the education that they bring to folks, right? Because you can create content and people can read up on memory care, on dementia, on, you know, different types of homes that folks can go to. But also your SLAs play a part in that as well, because that's something that I know if I was in that position, I would want to educate myself. But ultimately, you want to talk to someone about what should I do here.
It's a human factor.
Yep.
Right.
Like that's very comforting, and you can't take that out of the equation at all. Like, you want to talk to somebody, like especially for a decision like that. Like, I don't want to WebMD it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like I'm sending my mom somewhere.
Yeah, it's not.
You
can't be like. And I'm sorry, I did the whole analogy of funeral because it's the last thing you want to do in that regard. But the immediacy of need, right? In many cases, I'm sure, and the something I really just don't want to do. Like, I don't want to think about it. I'm not going to take my spare time right now, much like people don't think about a will, and they don't go like, I'm going to go write a will this weekend because, you know, I don't have a lot of stuff to do. It's like, no, they're not. Like, I don't want to think about that aspect of life. It's an unfortunate and real part of life, and it's something that you want to make sure you do correctly when you do it, right? But like, so, you know, how much we do of pre-knowledge of this stuff. Yeah. You know, I don't think the average person is coming to the table with a lot of information already, right? They're coming.
I think a lot of people are coming. I think a lot of people come to the table with an understanding that something's wrong, you know, not necessarily what exactly is wrong, but they know that something is wrong. You know, my mom lives alone, you know, she's been forgetting a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, then you start to look into memory care, and and then you got to get on the phone with somebody, you got 12 doctors, and then all of a sudden you come to some sort of, you know, either diagnosis or some type of, hey, I'm in this situation that requires this type of care that I know I cannot mitigate. Because I think a lot of people get to that point where they're like, I can't handle what's happening right now. And it's good to have a place to go, but ultimately someone to talk to about, you know, okay, I've got the basic information of what I know is the problem. But I think that's when most people probably hit, you know, a place for mom, Doug, is that they know that there is an issue that needs resolution in the near term.
Yeah, it's how do you and again, it's like anything else when it's in product or marketing. You know, obviously you have a spectrum of people in audiences that you need to serve and serve well, and I think it ranges from, you know, on the low end, you know, the people that know there's an issue, don't really know in context what it represents and what kind of help that they need, and, you know, are really starting to learn and discover around that. And then there are those on the other side of the spectrum that may already be fairly educated, know exactly what the problem is and what they need to solve, and how do you tailor an experience to them and help them out too. So you know, again, it's really, you have to take a measured approach in terms of helping people throughout that, you know, life cycle.
Yeah, and I think like even now it presents another interesting challenge for you guys, because when people get to them, you know, I'm sure a question a lot of your SLAs are getting are, hey, are these facilities safe? You know, like, should I be sending someone somewhere? What are you like? I know you started there about 5 weeks ago, but you're of course a quick study. I know. What are you seeing in like the overall industry here? You know, like when like you're like, how are you guys like assuring the customers that facilities are safe? You know, like what is the messaging there?
The communities are stepping up, and obviously, and again, credit to them as well. I mean,
Yeah.
they're fighting for survival, but they also know and care a lot about, obviously the people that they're tasked to do care for, and so testing, within the communities that exist, and even as a part of being able to, gain access to a community. A lot of those communities are stepping up and really building that into their acceptance and review and pipeline. And we're there obviously to help market that in a way to help guide users to those places where, if that is a concern, and something that's the top of mind consideration, which obviously today I would imagine it is, like, here are places that are helping, out and have that, top of mind and are working through that. And I think that's an important element in terms of how communities are kind of approaching the current state. So very, very top of mind, and something that is being actively, I would say that's a part of the active kind of discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw two ideas out there. One, I think that it's not a temporary thing. I think in terms of like just elder care, this is going to become a staple. Like, I think that everyone has in their mind what happened in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is an immediate, like, and we've heard a few stories since then of like other nursing homes, because they're an intimate place. The people interact with one another frequently. And that's a good thing. I want my parents, when it's time, if it's time, to be a part of a community. I would want to be a part of a community, right? In that place. So things spread, right?
Yeah.
So I think no matter what, sickness in general. The other thing I think is going to be interesting, and I'm just going to, again, throw a little, these things are recorded, so we'll have them for posterity for me to go, I told you so. But I think that virtual visits are going to become a much more popular thing at nursing care facilities. Like, I think that they're going to facilitate those. No, well, I think a virtual tour, yes, but I think like virtual visiting with, like, there may be technology that's less complicated than this that comes out to service the idea, like Portal by Facebook and others, that will specifically be focused on communication, and we will empower nurses and nursing care facilities will empower. The room has this powered, so you have that as part of it. Kind of, it will become a part of the process that you can't always go see your loved ones, but you can always see your loved one, right?
I imagine that's an opportunity for the healthcare industry in general. I mean, obviously this is like a specific area, but I know more friends that have seen doctors recently just to get caught up than they have probably, in the last couple of months than they have in the last few years. And I think it's easier for medical professionals to be able to see patients this way. I could see it. Not that I want to go too down a rabbit hole, but again, same we were talking about before. I mean, it saves a lot of overhead when you don't have to have like a large office and a bunch of rooms, that are sitting idle, when you don't have like a waiting room full of patients. So
and think about the telemedicine. Think about the telemedicine of being able to say, I have access to these, and then fill in the blank, doctors from X university, medical center, so on and so forth, available 24/7 to this set of potential patients. Meaning, like, you're in this specific facility, they will have access to you 24/7 to this group of doctors. You can almost create that situation where that becomes a selling point of going and being there. Yes, that doctor won't physically be in the room with the person, but they will telemedicine in or telehealth in and be able to diagnose and help and do stuff that I think will be an added value that otherwise, think about the fragility of an individual that now has to be taken from a home or a community and now go to the doctor. That in of itself is a journey. There's risk involved. There's a lot of stuff involved there. Yeah. Now you're going to be able to kind of cut that down. I think this is a very interesting proposition for that part of healthcare.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
I think it's good. I think healthcare, obviously, on the professional side, is going to be drastically, affected, and there's going to be a lot of changes there. And I think changes for the positive, in that there's a lot more optionality, and ways that you can gain access to professionals, in ways that you probably couldn't before, or didn't feel comfortable doing so before. And I think too, like stepping back into the academic world, I'm really interested and curious to see how, especially higher education. Colleges and universities are affected by that. Like, and what transition are they going to go through? I mean, one of the reasons I was about 75% along in my, graduate degree years ago, and paused because it was just tough, like balancing the night school schedule and work. And I really wanted to finish at the university I was going to. And so now that they have online courses, I, again, coincidentally, signed up for their online marketing MBA for starting this summer to cap it off. But I could totally see that becoming the norm, and interesting to see how that changes higher education culturally, since one, reduction of barrier for people to be able to participate in higher education opportunities, and two, what does that also mean for the social aspect? Since that was always traditionally the argument for living on campus or being on campus and paying for, those high, high cost of degrees, was that you, and room and board, was that the social aspect, which again, if that changes too, how does that affect, young professionals coming out of college and how they're ready for, interacting within the professional world? So again, not to go down a rabbit hole. It's
No, this is exactly the kind of rabbit holes we like. So
it's a lot that, like, I just naturally bumping into, and all coincidentally at the same time that this has all happened. So it's been really interesting that I'm having the opportunity to have, I guess, like a peek behind the curtain. Yeah. I guess in some respects, to see how that changes, especially the healthcare and education industries, and live it in real time.
Yeah, I think that this is also going to teach us the idea that, like, a video conference conversation is not going to be as odd. At least there's a whole generation of people, right? Irrespective of if we go into a new world or we all go back to work tomorrow. The idea of turning on your camera in a meeting is not foreign to us any longer, right? That is something that, like, okay, so if that's the basis we start working off of, now start thinking about whether or not, like, whether or not services such as yours or others actually start doing the same thing as telemedicine would be, which is a consultant gets on the video chat with you rather than the phone. What used to be done via phone now is done in pseudo person through a service, because you need to see the person's face. We know that this feels different than a phone call. Had we all been on a conference call doing this, it would not feel the same way for some reason as seeing people's inflections, their hand movements, their facial expressions, everything, their virtual backgrounds. I mean, but you get my point. The jokes land way better that way. But you get what I'm getting at. So, like, the concept is, can you take the expertise that lives within your company, which, like, your SLAs, for example, right? Right now, are they client facing? Do they deal with clients directly, or do they just curate the content?
Oh, no, they're client facing.
They're client facing, but they don't do it via video, correct?
I mean, I imagine now, like, that will, become. Again, I don't know all the nuances. Week 5, I'll claim newness, but I imagine that video conferencing will probably be leaned on more so as a normal course than it probably has been before. One, again, everybody's becoming used to leveraging it. So it's not like a foreign or just a tech specific way of being able to access and work with each other. Now it's kind of forcefully crossed all business verticals, and professional verticals. And two, I mean, I think it's a good one to take advantage of and move it forward, because there's more of a human connection than, traditional channels when it comes to, like, phone, email, et cetera. And again, it comes down to that human connection that we were talking about before. Like, that's a differentiating factor no matter what. And if it's as simple as being able to see someone and to hear the context and to actually get the impression that they do care. And it's not just this cold automated email set or just written words, but you can see that, hey, this person is real. They care about me and they're listening to me. and I'm having a conversation, that's a needle mover. And that
financial planners, doctors,
totally.
obviously, people that are helping you with situations that are strange or you are feel like a fish out of water, where you need more human, or have large price points associated with them, large consequences. All of these things need humans.
But that's nothing new. I mean, and like we always act like this is a new concept, but I mean, it's always been, you don't buy the product, you buy the salesperson, right?
You're right.
That's an age-old thing. So we're just kind of rediscovering the fact that that's important.
Well, I think we're just rediscovering a medium by which that's important, right?
Yeah.
Like we always thought, oh, that means I got to fly across the country to prove to you that I can sit in front of you and tell you the same damn stuff I could have probably told you on a phone call. Yeah. We could have been doing this over Skype or any one of the many tools we've had until now. It's not like Zoom was just invented yesterday.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's kind of this like convergence, because I think people got away from, or at least we all got away from the fact, and this is a tech problem as much as anything, that, hey, super personalize the experience, do it at scale, build a platform, and let people just completely self-manage and self-service. I think it's much more of a combination. If you really want to win, and this ties back to, and I know we're starting to bump up against the clock, but just to touch upon the data side of it, and this is why I think it's really important, and where I've have dived in deep over time. How can you combine that platform and knowledge graph around what people are interested in, whether implicit or explicitly, and not only tailor the platform experience to them, but also arm experts on your side to help in that curated experience as well, if and when the situation dictates that you need to work and interact with somebody. Like, you shouldn't be going in cold. Like, for people that are coming to a place for mom right now, we're asking them contextual questions around their situation in order to figure out who's best to connect that person to help solve their problem. But we should be leveraging the technology so that, hey, all those questions are to the person that's going to be able to answer it right there. They have the context already. They've seen what people have been browsing and reading about, so you understand what some of the concern points are, so that they can pick the ball up and run with it. There's nothing worse than like someone having to, go through the trouble, of self-curating and managing a relationship and giving you enough information so that you should be able to understand what their concerns are, and not leveraging that at all, and asking them the same questions again, and really coming off cold in that respect.
That's a great point. I hate this. It's almost, you can equate it to the credit card or the company you dial into, and you have to give them your social by dialing it, or you put in your phone number, or you do whatever, and then you get asked the same damn question by the rep once you actually make it through.
Yeah, I mean,
right? And it's like, why did I go through that? Like, I want to know that if you put me through that security wise, and I know that's not exactly what you're getting at, but it's that same feeling, right? It's like,
because you're also misaligning expectations. Like, I just gave you all of that. Yeah. And now you're asking me that again. It's like, one, why did you ask for that? And two, where did all that just go? I mean, obviously,
I never think about that point.
It's not to the service. Yeah, it's not to the service of what I thought it was going to help with. Like, you've just collected all that information and it's gone somewhere, certainly not to the person I'm talking to. So what the hell, like, what are you going to do with it? Like, this is where, like, Bill Burr, I'm a big fan of his, because he's like, no, I'm not going to give you that because I have no idea what you're going to do with this. It's not to help me out. Like, clearly it's not to help me out.
It's great point. And I think a really big takeaway for everyone to kind of contextualize this and then use it in your own business. The expertise that lives inside of your business lives in multiple ways. It's tribal knowledge that individuals have. It's institutional knowledge that your overall institution has built up over time. So, like, it may be databases, it may be, content, it may be a lot of stuff in that regard. Being able to make sure that the people that are client facing are empowered using that data, as well as making sure your digital experience provides that wholeheartedly to the individual who doesn't want to engage with one of your individuals first and foremost, creates the kind of brand that people can trust, the kind of brand that allows you to stamp that brand somewhere and it has meaning, right? And also allows those individuals, when they do have those conversations, to not simply have been trained by some training group in your company as to this is how you answer these questions, but to actually be armed, empowered, and often educated by your own company in what you're seeing, hearing, and understanding about the marketplace, because that's not just the marketer's job, that's everyone's job. The business should be really good at what the business does, and the data can help you understand what the business is doing and what it should be doing moving forward. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but am I kind of on track there, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most vital part. It's what you own from a data perspective, what you own from a knowledge perspective, and how you leverage it. Like technologies, most platforms are commodity. You can replicate what's going on, but it's really, I mean, the reason that Google, is strong and has an advantage is because it crawled, and it did a really good job of crawling and indexing and building algorithms on how to push back that data to people. The reason that Facebook is really, successful is because it had the multitude of all of like the graph knowledge around users so that it's really easy to market to them. But they're just platform plays. It was their data and what they had that differentiated and put them yards ahead, eons ahead of everybody else. So it's really, I think, a lot of the time people, and companies don't realize that there's probably magnitudes of potential, greater potential around the data that you own that's probably locked and you're not realizing the full potential of, than, trying to get more and acquire more and build, tactical experiences. But I think if you're able to realize, what you do have, because again, as a business, you have the understanding from a subject matter expertise, from a subject matter, and you also have the information to, and the context at which how to execute around that information. You need to do that smart and do that first before you kind of like look outward. So it's almost like a way to step back and work smarter and not necessarily harder, and get a good understanding in terms of what your competitive advantage is and how you're differentiated between your competition. And I say that not from a technology perspective necessarily, but from what information you have, how you're executing upon it, and how that's different from what your competitors are.
Great points. I love all of them. Doug, thank you so much for joining us today.
Totally.
It's been an amazing pleasure as usual. Thank you guys all as well for joining us today on Search from Home. We're going to tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern, as usual. We will be here back again with Ryan Hipp from Amway, who's going to be getting into some reputation management stuff, as well as some of the information he's been seeing. Thank you guys all for joining us so much. As we always say, stay home, stay safe, stay with loved ones, and stay smart. Try to stay sane. So thanks so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Have a good one.
You
Bye,
too.
guys.